Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel for a brand new mystery with Molly. If you are new around here, if you've never seen my face on your screen before, then hi, my name is Molly and I post true crime videos like this every single week. So if you think that is something that you might want to stick around for, then please do subscribe. And don't forget to switch on the little notification bell so that YouTube will let you know whenever I post a new video. This week we're going to be talking about a solved case from Wisconsin when a beloved married couple just mysteriously vanished one day in mid-2021. A double missing persons investigation was set up to establish what had happened to them, and despite initially being informed that they'd just gone on an innocent trip away, very quickly police began to suspect that in fact foul play was involved here. It wasn't long before this missing persons case turned into a homicide inquiry. An arrest in their killings was made literally within a day as evidence mounted against a particular individual in the couple's circle. Evidence which included data from Snapchat. This social media app literally helped the police to unravel this killer's twisted web of lies that he had spun. And with that, his motive for carrying out this shocking crime started to emerge. The perpetrator was a pathological liar who had essentially been leading a fake life, and he was willing to go to any lengths to conceal the truth and keep up with his deceit, even if it meant committing murder. Double murder. Let's delve into the unbelievable case of Bart and Krista Halderson. But quickly before we get into the case, I would just like to say a big thank you to Testimonial for very kindly sponsoring this section of the video. Testimonial is a loyalty reward app which rewards users with real money payouts for literally just playing popular mobile games. Now, I am a sucker for a mobile game. Playing them is how I spend the majority of my downtime in the evenings, so I can't quite believe that it's taken me this long to play them through an app like Testimonial so that I could be earning whilst I play. All you have to do is download the app, confirm that the app can have access to track your game's progress, you pick a game that you want to play, and off you go. Different games offer different coin rewards per task, so you can pick and choose whether you want to play the games that offer more or less. It's completely up to you. And the more levels of the game you complete, the more coins in your cash pot. So one of the games that I've downloaded through Testimonial and am playing currently is Serene Word Search. I've already earned so many coins through playing it so far, but at the moment I'm trying to reach level 70 to earn another 278 coins. I mean, some games literally offer thousands of coins per task, so again, you can pick and choose which ones you want to play. And then as soon as you've collected enough coins for a cash out, you can head straight to the payouts tab and have a look through the multiple different options to exchange for your coins, from PayPal credit to Amazon gift cards, and even deals and coupons from some top brands. And Testimonial will even notify you when they have daily and weekend promotions, allowing you to collect extra coins to add to your cash pot. So what are you waiting for? You can download Testimonial for free right now by clicking the link at the top line of the description box or scanning the QR code that is on the screen to start earning rewards for playing your favourite mobile games. And Testimonial is available to download on both iOS and Android devices. Thank you so much once again to Testimonial for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel. Thank you to all of you guys watching for always showing your support to the sponsors that we work with on this channel. And now let's just get into the case. So for this week's case, we are going back more than 4.5 years now to the summer of 2021 in Dane County, which is an area located in the state of Wisconsin in the US. And this is Bart and Krista Halderson. They were a married couple who lived in Dane County with their family. So just for a bit about them, Bart Halderson was 50 years old at the time that this case occurred. He was born on the 14th of May 1971. He was originally from Sheboygan County in Wisconsin, and his parents were Blake and Kayleen Halderson. I couldn't really find much information online about Bart's early years and his childhood. However, I do know that as a teen, he attended the Voulders High School. He graduated from there in 1989, and following this, he became a student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I believe it was there where he met the woman that would go on to become his wife, Krista Frater. Krista was a couple of years older than Bart. She was 53 by 2021, born on the 25th of January 1968. She was from the city of Madison in Dane County, so I believe she'd lived in Dane County her whole life. Her father was named Andrew, her mother was named Betty, and Krista attended the Madison East High School before graduating in 1986. And like I said, just like Brad, she attended the University University of Wisconsin-Madison, where they both earned their degrees and they started dating, and eventually the two of them married in July of 1994, making Krista Halderson. The couple went on to have 2 children together, 2 sons. Their eldest was named Mitchell, and he was 24 years old by the time this case occurred. And then following Mitchell, they had Chandler, who was 23 years old, so they were very close in age. The Halderson family also had 2 dogs. Their names were Izzy and Rizzo, and they settled down in a nice house in a village called DeForest in Dane County. And it would appear as though by 2021, the Halderson family were a nice, normal, happy family of 4. Both Bart and Krista worked. They had good jobs. Bart worked for an accountancy firm. He worked as the managing director. And Krista worked as an administrative assistant and customer service rep for an automotive company. And in their spare time, the couple enjoyed socializing with friends and going to watch the Wisconsin Badgers play football. They liked going to concerts and getting involved with their local community. Bart got involved with helping out at the Boy Scout, and he also enjoyed playing golf and doing things like woodwork and home remodeling. Krista was also very creative, very much enjoyed arts and crafts and interior design. She liked cooking, but more than anything else in life, the couple loved being parents. They loved being parents to their 2 boys. They loved spending time with their now grown-up sons, Mitchell and Chandler. By the summer of 2021, Mitchell Halderson was close to turning 25, and life was looking really, really positive for him. He had a good job working in tech, and I believe he was also engaged to be married, actually. He had a fiancée named Caitlin. And Mitchell was said to have always been a very outgoing young man. He was very easygoing, very chill. As for his younger brother Chandler, again, his life was also looking very, very good. He too was in a relationship. He had a girlfriend named Kat. Chandler still lived with his parents by the summer of 2021, but he was enrolled in college. He was attending the Madison College, where he was studying renewable resource engineering, and he also planned to earn a degree in IT. Alongside that, he worked part-time. He had an internship at an insurance company as a salesman, and he'd even recently secured an amazing new job with SpaceX, an astronautics company founded by Elon Musk, and he was planning to relocate to Florida for this job, get an apartment in Florida. In his spare time, he would volunteer as a scuba diver for the local police department, so yeah, he was an incredibly successful young man. He had achieved a hell of a lot by just 23 years old, and his parents, Bart and Krista, were so proud of him. They were proud of both of their sons. They absolutely doted on them, and they would take such pride and joy in sharing with their friends what their sons were up to, what they had achieved. As I said before, Bart and Krista loved nothing more than spending time with their boys and watching them succeed and grow up to become the best versions of themselves. In fact, Krista would even say that her main goal in life, her main goal as a mother, was just to make sure that her sons became the best men that they could possibly be. Bart and Krista Halderson just seemed to be the most loving and caring and devoted parents that anyone could ask for, really. They were just a lovely couple in general, always there for others, always willing to help anyone, didn't appear as though they were the type to have any enemies or anything, which is the reason why concern for the couple was very quickly raised in mid-2021 when both Bart and Krista Halderson seemed to just suddenly disappear without a trace. The date was the 2nd of July 2021. It was a Friday, and that Friday morning, 53-year-old Krista Halderson was due to be at work. She had a shift at the automotive company where she worked. However, she never actually turned up. She didn't show up for work that morning, and she didn't contact her work to let them know that she wouldn't be coming in, which was strange, very out of character for Krista. She was always a very reliable employee, and so naturally her colleagues became quite concerned, especially one particular colleague named Dan, because he wasn't just a co-worker to Krista. The two were very good friends outside of work too, so when Krista didn't turn up and he hadn't heard from her with a reason as to why, it just seemed really odd to him, and so Dan began trying to contact her. He was sending her text messages to her mobile and ringing her, but all of these calls went unanswered. No one picked up the phone. Dan waited a couple of hours just hoping to hear back from Krista, but he didn't, and so later that same day, in the afternoon of the 2nd of July, he headed to Krista's house with his partner. They knocked on the front door, no one answered, so they started looking through the windows, couldn't see anyone, and the house looked relatively normal. normal from what Dan could see. Dan then walked over to the garage on the side of the house and he noticed that both Krista's and Bart's cars were still parked in the garage, which seemed bizarre. I mean, it didn't seem like either of them were home, and yet both of their cars were still on the property. Dan continued walking around the house, I guess just looking for any sign of life, and when he walked towards the back of the property, that was when he was greeted by one member of the Halderson family, Bart and Krista's youngest son, 23-year-old Chandler Halderson. Chandler came out of the house. He'd actually just gotten out of the shower, so Dan said that he literally just had a towel wrapped around his waist. And so Dan asked Chandler if he knew where his parents were because there was no sign of his mum at work. And that was when Chandler explained that there had been a bit of an emergency at their family's cabin. You see, the Haldersons had had this old cabin in their family for decades. It was located in Langlade County in Wisconsin, about 180 miles away from Dane County, a couple of hours drive away. And it was in a beautiful area. It was in this remote forest right by the lake. It was lovely. So Bart and Christa would enjoy spending a lot of time there. In fact, Chandler said that they had planned to spend the coming weekend, the 4th of July weekend, at the cabin. Well, they planned to spend the actual 4th of July, which was a Sunday, at this parade in the town of White Lake in Wisconsin. But yeah, the rest of the weekend they would be at the cabin. However, they had to unexpectedly travel up north to the cabin, I believe sooner than planned, because there'd been some kind of plumbing emergency there which they needed to sort out, and so they left to go to the cabin earlier that morning, on the morning of the 2nd of July. And Chandler said that the reason their cars were still in the garage was because they'd gotten a lift with another couple that they were going to the cabin with, some friends of theirs, although Chandler said that he didn't actually know who this couple was, who these friends were. And that was that. Dan was like, oh, okay, I guess that makes sense as to why Christa hadn't been in touch. She hadn't had a chance to because of this emergency at the cabin. So Dan left, he went back home, but over the coming days, over the weekend, he kept in touch with Chandler asking if he had heard from his parents, and he claimed that he had. He had spoken to them. He said that his mother Christa had texted him and said that they would be back home on the following Monday, so the 5th of July. However, that Monday rolled around and once again, Christa didn't turn up for work. There was no sign of her. And it was the same the next day. She didn't come into the office on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. And it was at this point when I think her friend and colleague Dan was really panicking. Something just seemed so strange to him. Not only the fact that Christa hadn't been turning up for work and she hadn't been responding to his calls or text messages, but also apparently he knew that Christa had a doctor's appointment scheduled that week that she very much intended to attend, and she'd just missed it. She wasn't back from the cabin and so clearly hadn't gone to this appointment. And yeah, it was then when Dan just knew that something had to be wrong here. This was so unusual. And so when it got to the Wednesday, the 7th of July, Dan said to the Haldersons' youngest son Chandler, look, we really need to get to the bottom of this. We need to go to the police. And so that's exactly what Chandler did. On the 7th of July 2021, 5 days after Brad and Christa were last seen, Chandler went to the police station and he reported his parents as missing. So a double missing persons investigation was launched and police immediately got to work. They spoke at length with the couple's son Chandler, took a statement from him, and of course he told them exactly what he had told Dan, that his parents had left early Friday morning to go to their cabin for a plumbing emergency and to celebrate the July 4th weekend, but that they never returned. Chandler also allowed the police to have a quick look around the house, and again, everything seemed relatively normal. They also started conducting door-to-door inquiries and taking statements from the other people in the couple circle. And of course, in addition to this, the police obviously headed to the cabin in Langlade County to see if they were still there. This was the following day, the 8th of July 2021. And actually, I think when the officers arrived, they realised that they weren't the only ones who had travelled to the cabin in search for Bart and Christa. Bart and Krista's oldest son, 24-year-old Mitchell, and his fiancée Caitlin were also there. When Mitchell learned that his parents were missing, he decided to make the long journey to the cabin to try and find them too. But alas, they weren't there. There was no sign of Bart and Christa at the cabin. In fact, it didn't even seem as though they had been there recently. There wasn't any like food, I don't think, or luggage or travel bags, nothing like that. Nothing to suggest any recent activity. So it was puzzling. But the couple's sons were not willing to just give up. Whilst Mitchell and his partner helped the police searched the cabin, Chandler Halderson began doing things like conducting his own door-to-door inquiries, knocking on people's doors in the neighborhoods, asking if they'd seen his parents recently. He also actually did an interview with the media. The media soon got wind of this case. They learned that a local beloved married couple had just mysteriously disappeared, and so they began trying to spread the word. They approached Chandler Halderson and asked if he wanted to do an interview, just like an audio interview, which he did. He spoke about when he last saw his parents, when he last spoke to them, etc, etc. He seemed to be doing everything that he could to find out what had happened, to find his mum and dad. But was this just a cover? You see, it wasn't long at all before suspicion started to fall on Bart and Krista's youngest son Chandler, as aspects of his story started to crumble, not really make sense for the police. For example, you remember how Chandler said that his parents intended to spend the weekend at the cabin, but that on the actual 4th of July, the Sunday, they intended to go to the White Lake parade to celebrate? Well, police discovered that in fact the town of White Lake had had their parade on the Saturday, not on the Sunday like Chandler claimed. So it seemed as though he'd lied in his initial account. And why? Why lie about something like that? Why lie if you've got nothing to hide? But the most suspicious thing about Chandler Halderson, the thing that made detectives convinced that he knew more about his parents' whereabouts than he was letting on, emerged from the fact that they received a tip-off from someone in Chandler's circle regarding his own strange activity over the 4th of July weekend. Now, as I understand it, this tip actually came from the parents of Chandler's own girlfriend. If you recall, he had a girlfriend named Kat. They'd been together for about 2 years, and her parents had a farm in Dane County. It was about 20 miles away from where the Haldersons live, and I believe that's where Chandler and Kat had been on the 4th of July. They'd spent that Sunday with Kat's family at this farm. However, the day following this, so the 5th of July, Chandler actually returned to the farm on his own. According to one source, he'd called Kat's mother to ask if he could pop back to the farm that day to use their swimming pool. They had a swimming pool on the property, and she said, well, she wouldn't be there herself, she would be out of the house most of the day, but of course he was welcome to use the pool. But oddly, later that same day, when Kat's mother did return to the farm, she noticed that the pool hadn't been used. The cover was still over the top, Chandler wasn't in it, but she did spot Chandler's SUV car parked around the back of the farm with his car boot or car trunk open. Now, towards the back of the property, there was this big woodland, this big wooded area with a load of fields. Kat's mother didn't really think much of this at the time. I mean, she did think that it was a bit odd, but I don't think she really bothered to ask Chandler what he was doing. However, a couple of days later, when she heard that Chandler's parents were missing all of a sudden, she thought back to that sighting of him by the woods on the 5th of July, and she herself became quite suspicious. And so, thinking that this information might be relevant to the case, she got in touch with the police just the day after Chandler filed the missing persons reports on the 8th of July. So upon receiving this tip, this information from Kat's mother, officers were quickly dispatched to the farm, to that wooded area, to see if they could find anything that could indicate what might have happened to Bart and Krista Halderson. And sure enough, they did. When they got to the field entrance to the wooded area, they noticed that the grass was kind of matted down as if someone had recently driven along it, which kind of left a trail in the grass. So they followed this trail, and guess where it led them? It led the police to remains. Human remains. Hidden underneath a pile of tree branches, they discovered a male torso. And upon closer examination, police could see that this torso had 2 bullet wounds to the back. This man, whoever he was, had been shot in the back twice, and this was more than likely his cause of death. As I understand it, no other remains were found in this woodland. It was literally just this male torso. Later, of course, identified through DNA as being the torso of 50-year-old Bart Halderson. Bart had been murdered and then his body dismembered and part of him just dumped in this field. But the torso torso wasn't all the police discovered in the field. As they continued looking around, they found this old oil drum nearby, and inside of this oil drum were items that the killer had clearly used to dismember Bart's body. Inside the oil drum, there was a broken bow saw, some scissors, and also some pruning shears. So now the police were beginning to paint a picture here of what had truly happened to the couple. They hadn't gone to the cabin in Langlade County. They had, in fact, been murdered. Well, they knew for certain that Bart had been murdered. The whereabouts of his wife Christa still remained unclear, but it was looking likely that she was probably dead too. And of course, they now had their number one suspect. The fact that Chandler Halderson had been seen at the crime scene at this wooded area just 3 days before the torso was found made him the prime suspect. It really was looking like the Haldersons had been murdered by their own son. Their son, who they loved and adored and doted on, was the one who took their lives. And so Chandler Halderson was brought back into the police station to be questioned again, questioned and confronted. The police asked him to run through his account a second time, and he basically gave the same story that he gave in his initial statement. But of course now the detectives knew that he was lying. But from what I can gather, they hadn't actually told him yet why they knew that he was lying. And also they hadn't told him that a male torso had been found, what would turn out to be his father's torso. The detectives just said to Chandler, look, we have reason to believe that you are not being truthful. We have evidence to prove you aren't being truthful. We can't tell you what that evidence is yet, but we know you are lying. So this is your chance to tell the truth. Tell us what really happened to your parents. But Chandler refused to say anything. Instead, he quickly asked for a lawyer. He was now refusing to speak to or cooperate with the detectives. But regardless of his silence, he was arrested. 23-year-old Chandler Halderson was arrested. Now, he wasn't actually arrested for murder initially. At first, he was just arrested and charged with providing false information in regards to a missing person. I don't believe that they could arrest him for murder right away due to the fact that testing on the male torso hadn't yet confirmed that it was the torso of Bart Halderson. It wasn't until the 12th of July, I believe, when the DNA was matched and he was finally arrested and charged with first-degree murder as well as mutilating and hiding a corpse. Prior to being charged with murder, police got a search warrant for Chandler's home, his parents' house, to see if they could find any evidence in there which linked Chandler to the crime, and sure enough, they did. So firstly, one of the things the police found hidden in the house was both Bart and Krista's mobile phones, further proving that Chandler's story about them having gone to the cabin was a lie. He claimed that his mother had texted him whilst they were at the cabin, but how could she when her phone was in the family home? Clearly, he was the one who sent that text to cover his tracks. Other evidence inside the house suggested that this was the murder scene, as luminol tests revealed traces of blood where blood had previously been but had been cleaned away. There was also a bullet casing found in the basement of the home, and in addition to this evidence, when further searches were conducted at the farm where Chandler's girlfriend's parents lived, the farm where Bart's torso was discovered, the police found in a barn on the property what they believed was the murder weapon, the gun that had been used to shoot Bart Halderson in the back. It was a semi-automatic rifle which belonged to Chandler Halderson. Police found out that it had been given to him by a friend of his named Andrew, who Chandler used to play online video games with. Andrew had previously been in the military, and he gave this rifle to Chandler just the month before this case occurred in June of 2021. Apparently Chandler told Andrew that he wanted a gun, and so yeah, Andrew gave him one, but he had no idea why Chandler wanted a gun, what he intended to use it for. So the evidence against Chandler Halderson was rapidly mounting and mounting. However, the police were still faced with one huge question. Well, two huge questions. Number one, where were the rest of Bart Halderson's remains? As we know, only his torso was found in the woods, so where were his other body parts? And number two, where on earth was his wife, Christa? If she too had been murdered by their son, then what had Chandler done with her body? Well, there would be a big development in the case when police spoke to Chandler's girlfriend, Kat. Now, police spoke to Kat the same day that Chandler was arrested, the 8th of July 2021. She was interviewed at the police station, and in that interview, detectives asked her, you know, do you think there's any possibility that your boyfriend could have had a part in his parents' disappearance? Do you think that he could have done something to them? And she was adamant that no way was he capable of harming his parents. She even said to the detectives that the relationship Chandler had with his mum and dad was a good one from what she'd ever seen, and she'd been with Chandler for about 2 years by 2021. She said that they would always spend time together, they'd cook together, they'd have drinks together, they'd even play Mario Kart together. That's just what they were like as a family. Chandler was always close to his parents. He wouldn't have wanted them dead. But also Kat said that Chandler wouldn't have done anything to jeopardize his recent successes. As we know, he'd just gotten that incredible job offer working for SpaceX. Kat said that he wouldn't have done anything to put that at risk, put that into jeopardy. So yeah, initially she didn't for 1 minute believe that Chandler was guilty of any crime in this case. But I think eventually, once the evidence started to build, she realized that she couldn't keep living in this state of denial, I suppose. Anyway, Kat was very cooperative with the authorities throughout the investigation. She actually gave them permission to look through her phone, download her social media messages, download her messages between her and Chandler, and interestingly, she even showed the detectives a screenshot image that she had recently taken. And as it would turn out, this screenshot, this single picture, would provide an enormous breakthrough in the case. You see, this screenshot was from the social media app Snapchat, and if you are unfamiliar with Snapchat and kind of how it works, they have a feature on there called Snap Maps, I believe, where you can allow your friends or certain people on your friends list to see where you are, see your location. And Chandler had this feature switched on for Kat. Apparently this was mainly because Chandler had cheated on Kat before in the past, and therefore she didn't trust him, so he allowed her to track his location at all times via this Snapchat feature. And on the 3rd of July 2021, so just the day after Bart and Krista Halderson supposedly left to go to the cabin, Kat noticed on Snap Maps that Chandler was near an area by the Wisconsin River. His name on Kat's Snapchat was Hubby, by the way, that was her nickname for him. But yeah, she could see that he was by the Wisconsin River on the 3rd of July, which indicated that he'd previously lied to Kat, because in messages that he'd sent that same day, he claimed that he was just at home doing some chores for his parents. He never mentioned going to the Wisconsin River, and because Chandler was lying to her, Kat decided to take a screenshot picture of his location, I guess to confront him about it later. Maybe she thought that he was cheating again, who knows. But of course, when the police were shown this screenshot, they thought otherwise. They began to think that maybe the reason Chandler was in a location by the Wisconsin River was because he was disposing of other evidence there, disposing of other body parts perhaps. So they went to this part of the Wisconsin River where Snapchat showed Chandler had been. Apparently he used to swim there a lot in his teens. Police immediately started searching around, and sure enough, their theory was correct. They carried out an extensive search, and eventually they found even more human remains. They found 2 human legs which had come from the body of a female, later confirmed through DNA tests to have been the legs of Krista Halderson. Police could now 100% confirm that alongside her husband, Krista too had been the victim of a brutal homicide. Now, a cause of death for Krista could never be confirmed due to the fact that only her legs had been found, but of course it was more than likely that she too had also been shot. The police never found any additional body parts, so to speak, of Brad and Krista Halderson. They only found Brad's torso and Krista's legs, but additional evidence found inside the Haldersons' home told police exactly what Chandler had done with the majority of the rest of their remains. You see, in the fireplace in the Halderson house, the authorities found the remnants of human bones. More than 200 fragments of human bone were found in this fireplace, 53 of which were skull fragments, 18 fragments were from hands, 24 dental fragments, 8 from the vertebrae, 3 from long bones, and then there were 124 other unidentified bone fragments. Experts didn't know what part of the body these had come from. It seemed as though Chandler had tried to dispose of some of his parents' remains by literally burning them in the family fireplace. In fact, the police would actually obtain footage from a neighbour of the Haldersons. This neighbour lived, I think, directly opposite the Halderson family, and they had a security camera which pointed towards their house. So the police looked through this footage from the night of the 2nd of July 2021, and they noticed this flickering light in one of the windows. This light which was flickering for hours and hours in the middle of the night on the 2nd of July. And quickly the police realised what this flickering light was. It was the glow from the fireplace. It's clear that it was flickering for hours and hours in this security footage because that was when Chandler was burning down some of his parents' remains, burning them down to nothing but some little fragments of bone. I mean, it was sickening, truly sickening, as all of this evidence was coming to light. This was such a shocking crime. For a young man to cruelly murder, dismember, and then try to burn the bodies of his own parents, his parents who had only ever been the best mother and father they could have possibly been to him. You just couldn't make sense of it. Why on earth had this happened? Why had Chandler Halderson done this? Well, upon delving further into his life, police soon realised the most likely motive that Chandler had for wanting his parents dead, and it all centred around the fact that he was a compulsive and pathological liar. He had been lying to everyone, absolutely everyone in his life. You remember towards the start of this video we discussed how proud Bart and Krista Halderson were of their youngest son because of how successful he was at just 23 years old. You know, the fact that he was enrolled in college, he was a volunteer scuba diver with the local police, he interned part-time at an insurance company, he just received that unbelievable job offer with SpaceX, and he had plans to move to Florida. Well, it transpires that all of these things, all of these incredible achievements were just a load of crap. They were lies, all lies that Chandler Halderson had made up to, I guess, impress people, make people jealous, make them think that he was doing really well in life. In truth, he wasn't moving to Florida, he wasn't a police diver, he hadn't gotten a job with SpaceX, he didn't work for an insurance company, he wasn't in college anymore, he'd flunked out in the first semester, I believe. He wasn't really doing anything with his life. He would spend the majority of his days just sat in his bedroom playing computer games. And according to reports, he would lie to his parents saying that he was just in his room all the time on his computer because he was working remotely for the insurance company whilst also studying for college, I think. But he wasn't. Again, it was all lies. He was lying to everyone, his friends, his girlfriend Kat, his brother Mitchell, his parents. No one had any idea that Chandler Halderson was essentially leading this fake life, or at least that was until the summer of 2021, when finally, in the weeks or days even leading up to this case taking place, Bart and Krista Halderson started getting suspicious that their youngest son wasn't being honest with them. Now, Chandler Halderson went to great lengths to keep up with his lies. So, for example, he created a load of fake email addresses and wrote fake emails that looked as though they were from his teachers at Madison College, and he would CC his father Bart into these emails so that he could read them, and so Bart could speak to his son's teachers, completely unaware, of course, that they were fake, that he was actually exchanging emails with his son, pretending to be his son's teachers. He even went so far as to buy burner phones, and he would give his parents these fake numbers to his teachers at college, and when they would ring these numbers, it would actually be Chandler on the other end of the line putting on a fake voice, again pretending to be his professors. So he did all of that that to try and conceal the truth. Like I mentioned, he would also claim that the reason he was home most of the time on his computer in his bedroom was because he was working remotely for the insurance company as a salesman. So yeah, for a while, Bart and Christa didn't suspect anything. They had no reason to believe that they were being fed a load of lies. However, cracks eventually started to emerge in Chandler's stories, and the suspicion began when his parents started asking him for some rent money. You know, he was 23 years old, he was a fully grown adult man still living at home, he seemed to be earning good money. They didn't think it was unreasonable to ask him to pay some rent. However, Chandler wouldn't give them any. He seemed to be broke a lot of the time. He had no money to give, which of course didn't make sense to his parents. If he had a job and he was still living at home, why did he have no money? Bart and Christa also became suspicious because they apparently kept asking Chandler if they could see his college certificates, but Chandler obviously didn't have any to give them because he'd flunked out. So he would lie to his mum and dad about that and say that he was waiting to receive them, but that there was some kind of admin hold up at the college causing a delay. And again, his parents brought this story for a while, but eventually they became suspicious. It just wasn't adding up. Nothing that their son was telling them was making sense, and so Bart Halderson decided to take matters into his own hands and try and find out once and for all what was really going on here. And to do this, he decided to contact the Madison College directly, the college that Chandler attended, where he supposedly studied renewable resource engineering and IT. Bart just wanted to get to the bottom of all of this, and so he phoned the college on the 29th of July 2021, just a couple of days before he and his wife suddenly disappeared. Only he didn't call them as himself. On this phone call, Bart pretended to be his son, Chandler Halderson, and he spoke to the admissions administrator about the college courses that he was enrolled in. Only when the admissions administrator looked up his name, Chandler Halderson, on the school's computer system, he responded in confusion saying, well, it doesn't look like you are admitted into any program here, not at this college. And with that, Bart finally had the answers to the questions that he and his wife had been having regarding their son. Their suspicions were correct. He wasn't in college, he had been lying to them. And if he had been lying to them about that, then what else had he been lying to them about? Was he also lying about working part-time for the insurance company and the SpaceX job offer? And so it's believed that Bart Halderson decided to confront his son about these lies that he had told. In fact, the police discovered that on the 1st of July 2021, just the day before Chandler claimed his parents had gone to the cabin, Bart had asked his son Chandler to go with him to the Madison College, I guess to see if Chandler would just continue to try and lie or if he would finally tell the truth, I don't know. Bart was working from home that day whilst his wife Christa was at work in the office, and cell phone records showed that at around 2 o'clock on the afternoon of the 1st, Bart had sent a text message to Chandler which read, quote, "I'm ready whenever you are," as in he was ready to leave to go to the college. However, as it would turn out, that was the last text that Bart Halderson ever sent. He was never heard from or seen again after this, and so it's believed that it was shortly after this, on the afternoon of the 1st of July 2021, when he was murdered. Chandler Halderson clearly panicked when his dad asked him to go to the college with him. He realised that he was about to be caught out, and so he loaded his rifle and he shot his father at least twice in the back, killing him in the family home. And then it's believed that when his mother Christa eventually returned home later that day from work, he killed her too, and he decided to dismember their bodies and essentially scattered them around southern Wisconsin to cover his tracks. He tried to hide his father's torso in that wooded area behind his girlfriend's parents' farm. He ditched his mother's legs in an area by the Wisconsin River. He burned a load of their remains in the fireplace in the family home. I don't know if he scattered other body parts in other locations too, because as far as I'm aware, the only remains found that weren't I guess, burned down to bone fragments were Bart's torso and Krista's legs. So what he did with other body parts that he didn't burn, who knows? But yeah, he tried his absolute hardest to essentially destroy their bodies and get away with this awful crime. He came up with that fake story of his parents going to their cabin for a plumbing emergency and for the 4th of July weekend, and then the whole act began. He tried to deceive everyone, even lying to his own brother Mitchell about what had happened to their parents. And let's be honest, the only reason he reported them missing on the 7th of July was because he was pressured to by his mother's friend and colleague Dan. Chandler obviously had to go along with it to keep up the act. Following the discovery of Krista Halderson's legs, Chandler was charged with her murder too. I think he had 8 charges in total. 2 counts of providing false information about missing persons, 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of mutilating a corpse, and 2 counts of hiding a corpse. And when it came to his plea hearing, he pleaded not guilty. Despite the huge amount of evidence stacked against him, he decided to take his chances with the jury, I guess. He was still denying all involvement in his parents' murders. And so in January of 2022, he went to trial. Of course, the prosecution's case was that Chandler Halderson had committed this crime to, again, cover up the fact that he'd been leading a double life, to cover up all of the lies that he told everyone. His parents found out the truth and he couldn't risk them telling everyone. And so he killed them on the 1st of July 2021. And as well as the evidence they had to present to the jury, the evidence we've already discussed, they also had several witnesses testify during the trial. They had Andrew, that gaming friend of Chandler's that gave him the rifle, the murder weapon. They had Chandler's ex-girlfriend Kat testify as a witness. I think there was speculation initially that Kat may have been involved, or she may have actually known about the murders, because apparently the day after the killings, Chandler had asked his girlfriend to bring him some cleaning supplies to his home. Obviously, he intended to use them to clean up the blood evidence, which she did. She brought him over some supplies, but he told Kat that he needed the cleaning products to clean up some broken glass. He'd broken some glass by the fireplace that he needed to sort out before his parents got home from their trip to the cabin. But yeah, I think there was a little bit of speculation that Kat may have known about the killings. However, ultimately it was confirmed that she was completely innocent. She had no part whatsoever in this crime. She was actually working on the day of the murders and she had no idea about what her boyfriend had done. But yeah, like I said, there were several other witnesses brought forward by the prosecution during the trial, staff from the Madison College who could testify that Chandler was not a student and that the Madison College email accounts were fake ones he'd created. There were witnesses who testified that he'd never had an internship with the insurance company or with SpaceX. I mean, the prosecution's case against him was overwhelming, really. It was fairly rock solid, meaning that the defense's argument was a pretty weak one. They basically tried to claim that there just wasn't enough evidence. There wasn't enough direct evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Chandler was guilty of first-degree murder. Yes, he'd clearly lied. He'd lied a hell of a lot. He'd lied to everyone in his life about his jobs in college and other things, but the defense said that that doesn't necessarily mean that he was the one who killed his parents. However, clearly that wasn't enough to sway the jury. They ultimately sided with the prosecution and at the end of the trial found Chandler Halderson guilty of all charges, including the 2 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. He was sentenced in March of 2022 to life in prison without the possibility of parole, and actually his sentencing was the only time when the court heard directly from Chandler Halderson himself, I believe. He spoke during his sentencing, but all he really said was that he intended to appeal his convictions and that he was looking for a lawyer that would take on his appeal. And that was it. That was all he said. No remorse, no guilt. He never showed an ounce of care for the fact that he had brutally taken the lives of his own mother and father. His mother and father, who, I'll say it again, had only ever doted on him and his older brother Mitchell. And what just makes this whole case even worse, that much more heartbreaking, is that family members say that once Bart and Christa had found out about all of the lies that their son had told, yes, they would have been angry at first, but ultimately they would have just wanted to help him. They weren't the type of parents that would have flown off the handle and kicked him out or anything. They would have wanted to help him get back on his feet. They would have supported him through this, and let's be honest, Chandler would have known that deep down. So the fact that he still decided to callously take their lives is just unbelievable. Bart and Christa did not deserve this at all. So I'm very glad that Chandler Halderson is where he belongs, hopefully never to be heard of again. My heart goes out to Bart and Krista's oldest son, Mitchell. I can't even begin to comprehend how difficult this crime must have been to come to terms with for him. I mean, to lose his parents in such a horrific way, and then to learn that his own brother was responsible. His own brother was the one who did it. It must have been just shattering for him. But yeah, that concludes this case, the shocking case of Bart and Krista Halderson. As always, please do let me know your thoughts and opinions on this case down below in the comments. I would love to hear what you guys think. And also feel free to let me know of any other cases that you would like to see me cover on this channel. Again, you can pop them in the comments below, or alternatively you can go through my case request form, which is always linked in the description box of every single one of my videos. Thank you all so much for watching. Please do give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you again next week for another mystery with Mollie.